This is our section on religion in the 21st century. Now we're going to have 2 lectures in this unit, and then there will be a case study exercise that will finish this off. Next week, we're going to have a series of videos about interfaith movements and the difficulty of building interfaith programs, building bridges between different religions. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's usually, students find it very interesting, that part. So I have a quote here from a nameless Jew to a nameless Muslim, the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. It says, "Brother, there's a cloud of glass coming at us. Grab my hand and let's get the hell out of here." So one thing that we've learned throughout this semester is definitely that the world religions of the world are all unique. They have very distinct differences. They have very distinct characteristics that make them unique and make them what they are. But despite the fact that these religions are all very different, there's an increasing need for the members of these distinct religions to find commonalities amongst themselves and to build bridges, and to learn how to communicate and learn how to respect one another. I think this is really well characterized in this quote, right? Regardless of what any religious groups or anything might have thought they were doing on September 11th, in spite of whatever religious precepts they thought they were following when they crashed into the Twin Towers. For the people themselves, they were faced with real practical life and death decisions, not decisions about ideology and things like that. You know, when the towers came crashing down on top of them, it was really just about life, just about human life and trying to survive, and less about the differences of ideology. So with that, in this lecture, we're going to try and talk about ways that modern religions are struggling to adjust and react to the effects of globalization and pluralization, or pluralism. We'll talk about what pluralism is in a second. We're very familiar with the concept of globalization, right? This is something you're going to learn about in most of your classes. It doesn't matter if you're studying economics or politics or history or really anything at all. We have to talk about globalization. The world is getting smaller, so they say. It's becoming easier to come into contact with other parts of the world through media, through the internet, through TV and movies, through travel. You know, it's now possible to go to the ends of the earth on vacation. Travel packages will take you to anywhere from Egypt to Thailand to London, and you can get there in less than a day. Business is making the world smaller, right? If you're whatever you're wearing as you watch this, likely if you look at the tag on your clothing, you'll see your clothes were made in a completely different part of the world. Different parts of the world are reaching out to each other, right? If you own a business, you own a small manufacturing business, you could go on the internet and find a manufacturer in India or in China or in Peru. They can help you make your products, and you could find a new contact in less than a day, right? Despite cultural language differences, in spite of huge distances, everything is so much closer together now than it ever has been before. Things happen in other parts of the world, we know about it immediately. So that's had a lot of benefits, right, in the world. It's had a lot of benefits in terms of being able to learn about each other, in terms of being able to forge new relationships, in terms of the economy, in terms of opportunities to do things and learn things and see things you'd never learned before. But it has difficulties as well. Someone look at these little pictures. It's a man who's an Indian man. You can tell he's dressed as a yogi. He has a beard. He's dressed very simply, but he has a cigarette in one hand and a cell phone in the other. This is one of the odd things that globalization causes, right? It's yogis with cell phones and cigarettes. It's British English Thai monks teaching other British people about Buddhism. It creates all these kind of odd, interesting circumstances, but it also creates circumstances that are questionable, right? There have been a lot of questions in the East as to whether or not Buddhist monks and Hindu yogis should be allowed to keep cell phones, right? And how do you decide now? How do you decide what is a necessity in your life? For a lot of people, it might seem like your cell phone is a necessity. You need it for communication. You might need it in case of an emergency. You need it to contact your family, because there might not be any other way for you to contact your family. And it might not be that expensive to get a cell phone, even if if you're living a life of poverty. But at the same time, tradition dictates that you live a certain way, you do certain things, and you abstain from other things. So, so globalization has brought up all of these new, interesting problems. The other thing it's done is it's brought different philosophies and religions into contact with each other and forced them to ask very difficult questions about who is your neighbor and how do you get along with other people? Do you need to get along with other people? Is it necessary to convince other people of your point of view? Things like that. Another important difficulty or important challenge that the modern world is facing, modern religion is facing, is the issue of religion and politics. Now, from history, we know that there was a time in most of the world when your religion was kind of tied up with your ethnicity. You were born in a certain place at a certain time, then that dictated your religion. If you were born in India in the 2nd century BCE, you were Hindu. That's what that meant. If you were born in France in the 15th century, in the Middle Ages, you were Catholic. That's what that meant. If you were born, if you were born in 9th century Turkey, that meant that you were Muslim. That's kind of what decided that. It used to be that the state, the government, your rulers, your king, your queen, would be of a certain religion, and that would kind of encourage or promote that religion in the rest of the country. That's no longer the case. But yet there's still a lot of questions as to where religion and politics should be divided and how it should be divided. It might be that just because you have Christian leaders doesn't mean your nation is Christian. In this discussion in my other classes this week, if the majority of the Senate of the United States of America and the majority of the Congress and the executive branches are Christian, does that make it a Christian country? And if it's not a Christian country, then to what extent are our legislators allowed to draw upon religious principles to vote on important political issues? And does it matter what their religious beliefs are, or is it more about what the religious beliefs of their constituency, of what the voters think, what the religion of the voters is? And if that's the case, then does majority rule? If the majority of people in the country are Christian, does that mean that those values rule over the minority values, or do we have to give everyone some sort of equal voice, or allow everyone to be represented in our laws and in our government? How does that? Where do those messy divisions occur? So this is something that in the West, especially America and Europe, is something that is not really clear. In other parts of the world, it's much more clear. In China, it's communist, and atheism is the state philosophy. That's kind of how it is. Other parts of the world, certain Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia, government is founded on Islamic principles. And so for them, it's a very clear thing, right, that Islam should guide their government. And in other places, those divisions are much more messy and much more unclear. In a lot of countries, political parties are linked with particular faiths. In America, there's a Christian right. There's a group of politicians who tend to be more conservative, more right-wing in their politics, and they base that upon Christian values. And that can be found in every single nation. In Europe, most European nations, there's some sort of Christian right. In Muslim nations, you're going to find political parties that base their political platforms on Sharia, right? Regardless if it's a secular state or a religious state. In India, there are a couple of political parties that base their platforms, their political ideals, on Hindu ideas, and the idea that India should be Hindu. There are also there are also political parties in all of these nations that part of their political platform is that the state should be secular, right? Religion shouldn't get involved in the state. All of these countries have secular parties. In all of these countries, you'll find political parties that promote, atheism or non-theism, right? The idea that there is no religion shouldn't even play a role in society. And in all of these nations, these various religious political parties, secular political parties, kind of anti-religious parties, vary in the amount of power, political power that they have, the amount of clout that they hold. You can't really say in any one nation that religion is completely removed from politics. You just can't. Not as long as religion informs people's values and ideals. And this also raises the issue and the problem of the fact that, on the one hand, it can be good and it can be positive for a person, for a citizen of the United States, for example, to be able to look at their legislator and say, this person is of the same religion as me. Therefore, I know that I can relate, it can associate somehow with them and with their values on what they believe in. I can put some trust in that. I know where they're coming from, right? In a republic democracy, you want your representatives to represent you. But the other side of the coin is that it becomes very easy then for politicians to manipulate that and to claim certain religious identities that they might not practice or they might not fully represent in their work, right? So that can be manipulated very easily, and we've seen that. Certainly in America, we've seen that many times before. Politicians who claim certain religious values who turn out to, in their personal lives, not live up to those values at all. In that light, let's talk a little bit more about this idea of secularism. We talked about it at the beginning of the semester, and we've talked about it many times since. Secular essentially means not religious. But not religious, if I say something's not religious, that could have a lot of different meanings. You could use that in a lot of different ways. So can the term secular. Secular is used in many different ways. Let's take a look at it real quick. Secularism may refer to the separation of church and state, which many nations have adopted. So not necessarily pro-religion, not necessarily anti-religion, just believing that there should be a purposeful, intentional separation of religion and government, that the two things should kind of be in different realms, that they're different, they rule different parts of people's lives, and they shouldn't necessarily meet. Secularism can refer sometimes to an assumption that capitalism, communism, liberalism, all sorts of modern political, paradigms will eventually render religion irrelevant. right? That religion is just slowly fading away. It's no longer relevant in people's lives. This is just a natural process, and it's just going away. That is another way that secularism is used when it's discussed. Third way, it suggests that secularism can oftentimes revert to critical opinions of religion amongst contemporary thinkers, right? People who are not just maybe atheist or agnostic, but practically anti-religion, and are interested in intentionally, doing away with religion in one way or another. It's different than the second definition. The second definition assumes that it's just going away by itself. Fourth definition of secularism is that religious faith is only one possibility amongst many options for a person's life. So what this means, this fourth definition, is that secularism means that religion is your choice. Religion cannot be imposed upon you, but rather this fourth definition emphasizes a sort of freedom in society to choose religion as you want to. So it's important when we talk about secularism, right, to keep in mind that different people mean different things. A person who uses secularism like this, in terms of, he says this, if you said, for example, Richard Dawkins, a famous new atheist mind who wrote books called with things like The God Delusion, right? He's secular in a very different way than, say, is someone who supports freedom of religion in a secular state where you have freedom of religion, right? There's two different definitions of the word secular, two very different things. This concept of secularism was really discussed and thrown around a lot, in not just this last century, but the last few centuries, going all the way back to the Enlightenment. If you'll remember, in our section on Christianity, we mentioned briefly the Enlightenment, which was a period of time in which the realm of science was growing, our understanding of the natural world was growing, the belief in the power of the human mind and of rationale and of human reason was growing. And this was kind of the beginning of the separation of religion and science, the beginning of this idea that that religion might not be necessary to a healthy society, that that there might be answers beyond religion, and that from the Enlightenment, came this idea that church and state should be separated, that science and religion were necessarily in conflict, things like that, and this idea that eventually religion was going to become irrelevant, right? This was just bound to happen. That all intelligent people, all well-educated people, eventually have turned away from religion. And that was really a popular idea for a long time. But if anything, we found in the in most recent times, religion has seen a resurgence throughout the world. Religion is becoming more important in a lot of people's lives, and not less. We've seen a resurgence in religious groups, in new expressions of religious belief, in new forms of practice and new religious philosophies. It seems as though religion isn't going away, but it's changing. It's changing. And that can be frightening, and that can be strange. This is what we call religious pluralism. Pluralism is the word plural means multiple, right? It means many. So religious pluralism is this idea that all these different religions are living side by side now in the world, and they're living much more closely than they used to. It used to be centuries ago, or not even centuries ago, even a century ago, even 50 years ago, there are places in the world where you might grow up in your religion, the religion of your family, of your community, and you might never, ever, ever encounter someone of a different faith. Might just never happen. You might never have to ask the difficult questions that come with meeting someone of a different faith or different philosophy. But that's no longer the case. Everyone has to now encounter people of different ideas and different backgrounds. That is changing the face of religion. I like this image down here, right? It's like all these different religions side by side, and no one's face is completely showing, right? It's a spectrum of religious faces, and at the bottom it says e pluribus unum, which is Latin, is this the saying of the United States of America, which means out of many, one, right? Out of many comes one. So there's this hope that within pluralism, we can find a certain oneness, that we can somehow stand side by side, and learn to live harmoniously. In the world right now, as we know it, there's no one religion that really dominates. You can't really say that one religion dominates. You could say that Christianity is really popular in the West, and the West has a lot of power, but Asia also has, a large economy over there. Buddhism and Hinduism are very popular, and Hinduism and Buddhist ideas have spread into the West and become very popular. But look at the Middle East, which is, politically and economically very important. They're Muslim. So you can't really say that any one group, any one religion dominates any more than you can say that any one country right now dominates. We're all kind of leaning on each other. We're all kind of interwoven together. The book does a good job of pointing out that even the largest of religions, like Christianity, consist of thousands of forms, right? You can't even say that, if you wanted to say that Christianity was the dominant religion, you'd have to say, well, which Christianity? Catholicism? You can't say Protestantism, because Protestantism consists of, so many different groups, from Baptists to Presbyterians to Universalists to, all sorts of different groups, right? So even within every religion, there's not necessarily one clear dominant voice. So this having to stand side by side and having to encounter the other, encounter what's different, has created a lot of negative reactions. There have been a lot of negative reactions to pluralism. There have been very defensive reactions where religious groups have kind of hardened their religious boundaries. They've made it very clear that, that, for example, the famous Westboro Baptist Church said very clearly, this is what Christianity is, and you're either in or you're out, and if you're out, we won't have anything to do with you. That sort of reaction, that sort of attitude, right, of just kind of building a wall and trying to keep out other voices. And then there have been more offensive reactions, right, just terrorism and counterterrorism efforts. And there are many different kinds of ways of attacking your enemies, or attacking people that you view to be your enemy, or physically attacking them, and otherwise attacking their reputation, speaking out against them, spreading fear and rumors and all sorts of other things. And these reactions all come from fear, right? Negative reactions to pluralism are all really based. And negative reactions to the other are all based in fear. Fear of having to change, fear of being replaced, of losing your power in religion and philosophy. And I think in things like psychology and sociology as well, we talk a lot about the other, with a capital O, the other. The fact that, which is this idea that when human beings encounter something that is different, something that is other, it is frightening, and it can seem challenging, challenging to their sense of who they are. And a lot of religious groups and religious leaders have reacted very strongly to that fear of the other, and reacted in very counterproductive and even violent ways. And in my opinion, that's where that comes from. It's a sense of fear of losing your own authority, losing your own sense of self. When Muslim extremists see the West, they see this growing power that challenges their own sense of what's right and wrong. In India, when Hindu extremists, when Hindu nationalists attack Muslim mosques, it's because they fear, losing ground in their own country and losing the place in the world where Hinduism belongs, and losing their sense of self, right? It's always based on fear. So how do we respond to other faiths? So we've talked about this first one, exclusivism. This idea that there's only one religion, it's your religion, and your religion is the only one that's true and valid, right? It excludes everything else. I'm right and everyone else is wrong, period. Draw a clear line in the sand, right? You're in or you're out. Its opposite is inclusivism, in which other religions are not seen as false or not seen as threats, right? And inclusivism takes many forms, right? You can take kind of a pluralistic point of view or a universalistic point of view. What is the difference between pluralism and universalism? Pluralism tends to put more emphasis on the idea of difference and uniqueness, right? So if you're an inclusivist pluralist, you would say that we're all different and we need to respect each other's differences. We can agree to disagree. That's what pluralism says. We can agree to disagree. You think your thing. You think Buddhism is the religion. Is the best religion. I think that Islam is the best religion. We can agree to disagree. We can respect each other. Universalism is more of an idea that all religions deep down inside are the same. That we're all kind of based in the same commonalities, such as the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a rule that's found in every religion in the world. An idea of God and an idea of soul, an idea of community. That the foundations of all religions are kind of the same, right? So there's two different inclusivist points of view. And pluralism and universalism, they're not necessarily opposed to one another, right? You could say that there's truth in each point of view, that we come from the same roots, but that ultimately we're distinct. Just like as human beings, we're all human beings, but we're all at the same time we're individuals, right? There can be a balance between pluralism and universalism. But then it becomes a question of where is that balance, and how do we balance it, and how do we respect each other, and how do we decide if something is sacred to you and something else is sacred to me, and it clashes. You do. I have this picture here. I thought it was so interesting. I found this. I remember several months back, I guess, when I was first planning the lectures on Judaism. You see, this is an image. These two girls had their picture taken outside of the store. This is in New York. I believe this is in New York. And this is in an ultra-Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. So the owners of the store are Orthodox Jews, right? And as we remember, Orthodox Jews usually follow the Torah and the laws of the Torah very, very carefully, and they dress very conservatively. Women dress very modestly, men dress in a very certain way. And a lot of times, if you go to Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods anywhere in the world, New York, London, Israel, and Jerusalem, anywhere you go, Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods a lot of times will request that women walking, even just passing through, are dressed modestly, or even have their hair covered, right? If you're in their neighborhood, if you're in their space, they want you to act respectfully. And it's not just to, dress modestly, also to act in respectful ways, certain respectful ways. So this store here has a dress code. You see, it says in Hebrew as well. So this might be in Israel. I'm just not sure, but it says dress code. It's dress code for the store. No shorts, no barefoot, no sleeveless, no low-cut neckline allowed in this store, right? So I don't know if you can see very well, but this is just a little like mom and pop, like grocery store. These two girls wanted to go in, and they were asked to leave. You can see they're in shorts, and they have low necklines, and anywhere else in the United States, this would not have been a problem. But here in the store, in this neighborhood, they were asked to leave. And so they posted this picture. And it created kind of, not a firestorm, but it did create a lot of conversation. And I mean, there are a couple ways of looking at this. It could be, just think about this. Could be that the owners of the store have very strong religious beliefs, and they are just asking that people recognize and respect those values that they value, and not expose their family. Family-run business, they want to expose their family to certain values that are considered inappropriate or immoral, and that these girls just are refusing to respect those values, right? That these girls, don't care what this family believes in. That they just want what they want, which is go in the store and buy something. They don't care about the people themselves within the store. Or on the other side of the coin, it could be this family in this neighborhood that runs this store is trying to impose its views on people. That it is trying to get other people to follow a path or a lifestyle that is not their own, and that these girls are just want their basic rights to be able to go into a store and dress the way they want to be dressed, without people judging them or telling them what they need to do, right? So this could be an issue of respecting a minority religion's beliefs and showing respect for minority religion, or this could be an issue of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, the right to dress the way you want to express yourself through your clothes, without other people, telling you how to do that, right? So these are both sacred values to these two groups: the freedom of expression, a secular value, but still very, in a lot of ways, sacred to American people, and then modesty and propriety and showing respect to the Jewish law, on the other hand, which is very sacred to the Jewish people. The thing that strikes me as so funny about this picture, and I have to say this, is that either party, either group, the girls or the Jewish family, could take relatively simple steps to solve this problem. The family could just, kind of deal with it, just like let them come in and then leave, and tell them, please, if you come back, cover your shoulders, cover your legs. They could do that and not make a big deal out of it. The girls could simply cover their shoulders. They could have, if they knew that they were going through a Jewish neighborhood, they could have brought a shawl or something. They could just respect the beliefs of these people and go to another store. They could just go to another store and get what they need, right? So I feel like both sides could take very simple steps to overcome this problem if either was willing to kind of come halfway, or either was willing to accept or respect the other. So that brings us to the last idea. Moving beyond mere tolerance. I think the book does a good job of talking about this. That a lot of people seem to think, in the face of pluralism, in the face of having to encounter many different religions, many different people, different cultures, different philosophies, that the answer is to learn tolerance. But there have been a couple of people who've spoken out against tolerance. This quote from the book by Wendy Brown says, "Despite its peaceful demeanor, tolerance is an internally unharmonious term. Like patience, tolerance is necessitated by something one would prefer did not exist." Right? So tolerance is something that you use when you encounter something that you don't like. If I were to say to you, I don't agree with your beliefs, but I can tolerate them, that would be offensive, right? To just merely tolerate your beliefs, just merely put up with them. I can put up with your beliefs. I can cope with it, right? That's not really respectful in a lot of ways. That's just declining to outright insult you, or tell you that I think you're wrong. I'll tolerate you. Rather, we kind of have to move past tolerance and try and find more middle ground, and trying to find places of understanding and respect, right? Based upon education, based upon the intention to get to know one another, and not just merely cope with the discomfort that comes with meeting the other, like in this picture over here, right? These two groups are merely tolerating each other, right? There's no respect there. There's no respect given, I think. There's another quote here that says, "Spirituality is not mere tolerance. It is the absolute recognition of the other's faith in God as one's own." This is a little ambiguous. I agree with this quote, but it's a little ambiguous here when it says the absolute recognition of the other's faith in God as one's own. I'm not sure if Sri Chinmoy means that we should recognize that your faith is my faith, that ultimately our faith all comes from the same place, or that your faith and my faith might be different but have the same value, right? I'm not sure if this is a universalist or a pluralist point of view, but it is certainly an inclusivist point of view, and it tries to move past the idea of mere tolerance, right? We have to move past tolerance. We have to move into acknowledgement, right? Acknowledgement of each other's differences and of each other's right to exist. Acknowledgement of that each of us holds our own beliefs sacred, and that it is important to us. What might not be important to you is important to me, right? And so it still has value. We have to do more than just tolerate that. I like this image here of these two families together, with their kids, trying to instill understanding and friendship from a young age. You don't have to necessarily agree on everything. Doesn't necessarily mean that you can't forge relationships. The discussion question is a really hard discussion question. I'm not going to lie to you. This is one you're going to have to think about for a second. I want you to go all the way back to the beginning of the semester. I want you to go back to when we talked about the rules of discussing religion. Think about Hinduism and the issues of Hinduism in modern times, like the family whose children weren't interested in doing puja or going to temple. Think about Buddhism, think about the issues of Tibetan Buddhism, of the decline of Buddhism in Thailand, of issues of how Shinto and Taoism, Confucianism act in modern societies. Think about Judaism, the idea of secular Judaism, the idea of Judaism modernizing. Think of Christianity modernizing. Think about Islam. Think about all these different religions. Based upon what you've learned this semester, what challenges do globalization and religious pluralism pose to all of the religions that we've studied? There's certain challenges that across the board everyone is facing, right? There are certain things that are difficult for all religions to deal with right now. And this is an important question because it is from these shared challenges that we can form interfaith and interreligious movements. The next lecture we're going to talk about that. In the next lecture we're going to talk about interfaith. We're going to talk about ways in which people are trying to build bonds with one another and move past tolerance into working together and forming friendships and relationships. Okay? So think carefully about this question. It's not an easy one, but I look forward to reading your answers. Thank you. Email me with any questions that you have.